subscribe our channel. If you like our video, please share it with your friends. You can also click the bell icon to get the notifications.
Internal combustion engine enables the driver to decide which source of power is appropriate for the travel requirements of a given journey. Major U.S. auto manufacturers are now developing feasible hybrid electric vehicles, and some are exploring fuel cell technology for their electric cars. When we recycle, used materials are converted into new products, reducing the need to consume natural resources. If used materials are not recycled, new products are made by extracting fresh, raw material from the earth, through mining and forestry. Recycling helps conserve important raw materials and protects natural habitats for the future. Investigators also compared those microbes with those living in 52 other soil samples taken from all around the planet. The park had organisms that also exist in deserts, frozen tundra, forests, rainforests, and prairies. Antarctica was the only area that had microbes that did not overlap with those found in Central Park. Only a small percentage of the park's microbes were found to be already listed in databases. Traditional divisions of domestic work are understood to persist because of the strong association of the home with femininity and paid work with masculinity. To challenge who does what in the home is arguably equivalent to challenging what it is to be a woman or a man. Shrimp farmers used to hold animals in nursery ponds for 30 to 60 days, now they try to move them into grow-out ponds in less than 30 days. This reduces stress on the animals and dramatically increases survivals in the grow-out ponds. Many farms that abandon nursery ponds have gone back to them, and the results have been surprisingly positive. They're using the old, uncovered, earthen, nursery ponds. Along with customary classes on subjects such as finance, accounting, and marketing, today's MBA students are enrolling on courses for environmental policy and stewardship. Indeed, more than half of business schools require a course in environmental sustainability or corporate social responsibility, according to a survey of 91 U.S. business schools, published in October 2005. For the first 2 or 3 years after the Second World War, a new title would often sell out within a few months of publication. However, unless public demand for the book was unusually high, they were rarely able to reprint it. With paper stocks strictly rationed, they could not afford to use up precious paper or tie up their limited capital with a reprint. It was found that while many companies express interest in Jacobson's use case approach, actual scenario usage often falls outside what is described in textbooks and standard methodologies. Users therefore face significant scenario management problems not yet addressed adequately in theory or practice, and are demanding solutions to these problems. First-year university students have designed and built a groundbreaking electric car that recharges itself. 50 students from the University of Sydney's Faculty of Engineering spent 5 months working together bits of plywood, foam and fiberglass to build the concept car. They developed the specifications and hand-built the car. It's a pretty radical design, a 4-wheel drive with a motor in each wheel. Biology is the natural science that studies life and living organisms, including their physical structure, chemical processes, physiological mechanisms and evolution. Certain unifying concepts consolidate it into a single and coherent field that recognizes genes as the basic unit of heredity, and evolution as the engine that propels creation and extinction. Teenage girls are continuing to outperform boys in English while the gender gap in achievements in math and science has almost disappeared. The figures show that last year 80% of 14-year-old girls reached at least the expected level 5 in English, compared with 65% of boys. But in math, the girls are just 1% ahead of boys, while in science the difference is 2%. Since its inception, the UN system has been working to ensure adequate food for all through sustainable agriculture. The majority of the world's poorest people live in rural areas of developing countries. They depend on agriculture and related activities for their livelihoods. This makes them particularly vulnerable to man-made and natural influences that reduce agricultural production. There is no single method of learning that guarantees success. How we learn that depends on many different factors. What works best for you will not necessarily be the same as the approach used for the other students, even if they study the same course. We are all unique as learners, although some patterns emerge from any groups of students. The preparation of abstracts is an intellectual effort, requiring general familiarity with the subject. To bring out the salient points of an author's argument calls for skill and experience. Consequently, a considerable amount of qualified manpower that could be used to advantage in other ways must be diverted to the task of facilitating access to information. A thesis is a claim that you can argue for or against. It should be something that you can present persuasively and clearly in the scope of your paper, so keep in mind the page count. If possible, your thesis should also be somewhat original. Today, telecommunication is widespread and devices that assist the progress are common in many parts of the world. There is also a vast array of networks that connect these devices, including computer, telephone and cable networks. Computer communication across the Internet, such as email and instant messaging, is just one of many examples of telecommunication. Deaf children learning a language could certainly pursue the development of listening and spoken language skills if desired, and doing so would carry much less risk knowing the child would have mastery in at least one language. If a child does this not succeed in mastering either a spoken language or a sign language, we must then ask how much benefit the child derived from interventions in each language relative to the amount of time and resources dedicated to those interventions. Food is one of the most important things you'll ever buy. And yet most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, what kind of computers to buy. A hazard assessment should be performed for work involving distillations of organic liquids and should thoroughly address issues relating to residual water and possible decomposition of the solvent in question, as well as the physical placement of the distillation apparatus and heating equipment to be employed. A constellation is an area on the celestial sphere in which a group of stars forms an imaginary outline or pattern, typically representing an animal, mythological person or creature, or an inanimate object. The origins of the earliest constellations likely go back to prehistory. New research shows that during the global financial crisis, workers who stayed in jobs did not reduce their working hours, despite the claims that cuts in hours have led to job losses. A study found that the life of people who stayed with the same employer remained relatively unchanged. The latest scientific evidence on the nature and strength of the links between diet and chronic diseases is examined and discussed in detail in the following sections of this report. This section gives an overall view of the current situation and trends in chronic diseases at the global level. Hundreds of millions of American people eat fast food every day without giving it much thought, unaware of the subtle and not-so-subtle ramifications of their purchases. They just grasp a hamburger and unwrap it and toss the wrap into the bin. The whole experience is transitory and soon forgotten. Imagine living all your life as the only family on your street. Then, one morning, you open the front door and discover houses all around you. You see neighbors tending their gardens and children walking to school. Where did all the people come from? What if the answer turned out to be that they had always been there, you just hadn't seen them? Perhaps the most measurable benefit of the program has been the opportunity to meet in small groups. Something that is difficult to arrange in such a desperate organization. Many officers would have to work together for 30 years but would not know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Before the discovery of Australia, people in the Old World were convinced that all swans were white, an unassailable belief as it seemed completely confirmed by empirical evidence. The sighting of the first black swan might have been an interesting surprise for a few ornithologists, but that is not where the significance of the story lies. Certainly, one of the important values of literature is that it nourishes our emotional lives. An effective literary work may seem to speak directly to us, especially if we are ripe for it. The inner life that good writers reveal in their characters often gives us glimpses of some portion of ourselves. We can be moved to laugh, cry, tremble, dream, ponder, shriek, or rage with a character by simply turning the page instead of turning our lives upside down. Australia has one of the world's most important mining industries. It is a major exporter of coal, iron ore, gold, bauxite, and copper, and is self-sufficient in all minerals bar petroleum. Since the first discoveries of coal in 1798, mineral production has risen every year. In the decade to 1992, it doubled. Yet it is precisely in observing the intertwinings of success and failure that Chasing the Flame makes its greatest mark. With piercing insight and relentless logic, it reveals the pitfalls of international politics and details an intricate struggle between individual and institution. It haunts us with the poignant truth that even a great man can do only so much to reinvent the world. The United States is at present the world's market for motor cars and trucks. An agent for the U.S. Bureau of Foreign and Domestic Commerce reports a prosperous condition of affairs prevailing in Japan, which is buying more automobiles, especially large cars, than ever before. The asteroid that slammed into the Moon 3.8 billion years ago, creating the 𝗂𝗶𝗰𝗆 basin, may have had a diameter of at least 150 miles, according to a new estimate. The work helps explain puzzling geological features on the Moon's near side, and has implications for understanding the evolution of the early solar system. The terms summary and abstract are often used interchangeably, resulting in some confusion. This problem arises because there are two distinct types of abstracts, descriptive and informative. The informative abstract is sometimes called summary, the descriptive is not. The descriptive abstract is usually only 2 or 3 sentences in length, hence it is not a summary or very informative. We all know about bacteria, viruses, and microscopic protozoa. We can watch the way that these tiny agents move into our bodies and damage our organs. We have a growing understanding of how our body mounts defensive strategies that fight off these invaders, and have built some clever chemical that can help mount an assault on these biovillains. These decisions are highly nuanced. Of course, we use a lot of data to inform our decisions, but we also rely very heavily on iteration, research, testing, intuition, and human empathy. Now, sometimes the designers who work on these products are called data-driven, which is a term that totally drives us bonkers. The fact is, it would be irresponsible of us not to rigorously test our designs when so many people are counting on us to get it right. Public demand for education has remained strong, reflecting the importance of education as a means of social progress. Aware of the added value of education to the world of work, the government continues to innovate and update the education system in order to produce a qualified and competent workforce. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree, because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience. A unique characteristic of online shopping environments is that they allow vendors to create retail interfaces with highly interactive features. One desirable form of interactivity from a consumer perspective is the implementation of sophisticated tools to assist shoppers in their purchase decisions by customizing the electronic shopping environment to their individual preferences. A national study into fraud by bookkeepers employed at small and medium-sized businesses has uncovered 65 instances of theft in more than 5 years, with more than $31 million stolen. Of the cases identified by the research, 56 involved women and 9 instances involved men. However, male bookkeepers who defrauded their employers stole 3 times, on average, the amount that women stole. Conservation scientists have long tried to map how much of the planet remains undegraded by human activity. Previous estimates using satellite imagery or raw demographic data found anywhere from 20 to 40% of the globe was free from obvious human incursions, such as roads, light pollution or the gaping scars of deforestation. But an intact forest canopy can hide an emptied-out ecosystem below. How quickly this occurs depends on the dynamics of fertility, mortality and overseas migration. While a moderate pace of demographic change allows for gradual adjustment of the economy and policies to the changing population demographics, rapid changes are more difficult to manage. As a result, governments and society as a whole may need to take actions to address these issues. Sleep behavior is also known as sleep disorder. People with sleep disorder often talk or walk in their sleep. They are not aware of what they are talking about or where they are going. There aren't any serious effects on the body in general, but it may be connected to mental health. People with childhood trauma, unspeakable problems or depression are the ones with different sleep behaviors. Participating regularly in physical activity has been shown to benefit an individual's health and well-being. Regular physical activity is important in reducing the risk of chronic diseases, such as heart disease and stroke, obesity, diabetes and some forms of cancer. The National Physical Activity Guidelines for Adults recommends at least 30 minutes of moderate-intensity physical activity, preferably every day of the week, to obtain health benefits. Artificial neural networks have recently become the state-of-the-art technique for crucial signal processing. Applications such as specific frequency classification, structural health monitoring, disease detection in power, electronics circuitry and motor fault detection. This is an expected outcome as there are numerous advantages of using adaptive and compact deep counterparts, which can be efficiently trained with a limited dataset of signals, besides requiring data transformation. Australians speak English, of course. But for many tourists and even some locals, Australian English has only tenuous links with the mother tongue. Our speech is peppered with words and phrases whose arcane meanings are understood only by the native speaker. It is these colourful colloquialisms that Australian slang is yet to truly explain. Tesla's theoretical work formed the basis of modern alternating current electric power systems. Thomas Edison promised him almost $1 million in today's money to undertake motor and generator improvement. However, when Tesla, the ethical Serb, asked about the money, Edison's reportedly reply was, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor. The pair became arch rivals." Electronic discourse is one form of interactive electronic communication. In this study, we reserve the term for the two-directional texts in which one person using a keyboard writes language that appears on the sender's monitor and is transmitted to the monitor of a recipient, who responds by a keyboard. The best comparison is likely a magnetar, a young neutron star with a powerful magnetic field, the researchers said. Magnetars also produce bright X-ray flares. While magnetars are thought to be young stars, the two flaring objects in this study reside near elliptical galaxies, which contain older stars. So the objects are likely too old to be magnetars, the researchers said. The department determines whether or not the candidate has passed the examination. In cases where an appearance for the final public oral examination would constitute a substantial financial hardship for the candidate, the Director of Graduate Studies may recommend to the Dean of the Graduate School for a virtual, video-conferenced examination of the candidate. Companies will want to be known not just for the financial results they generate, but equally for the imprint they leave on society as a whole. First, ensuring that their products contribute positively. Second, operating in a way that approaches a net neutral impact to the natural environment. And third, cherishing their people. The brain is divided into its hemispheres by a prominent groove. At the base of this lies nerve fibers which enable these two halves of the brain to communicate with each other. But the left hemisphere usually controls movement and sensation in the right side of the body, while the right hemisphere similarly controls the left side of the body.